DeAndre Hopkins, now a free agent after being released from the Arizona Cardinals. What are the best landing spots for D-Hop as we approach training camp for the 2023 NFL season? And what's going on at OTAs this week, including Matt's experiences in Pittsburgh, and questions about how we got here. Why are we here? And how do you get into what we are doing as podcast hosts? All that and more come up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Shout out to those everydayers. Make sure you're subscribed up on the new YouTube channel and everywhere you get your podcasts. All right, I want to start with this, Matt, which is DeAndre Hopkins. And we haven't really gotten deep into this yet. And now he is a free agent. You know, there was rumors of him being shopped this offseason. Apparently that contract a little too big. Nobody wanted to take it on. So a trade was not found for the Arizona Cardinals. So they don't want to pay the contract either, apparently, for DeAndre Hopkins. And they've decided that they are going to release DeAndre Hopkins, now who is a free agent. And he put out what he's looking for publicly. What he's looking for in a team. He wants a good quarterback. He wants a winning organization. He wants a team with a good defense because defense wins championships. Matt, do you see a good landing spot for wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, and how much do you think he has left?
So let's unpeel some things. I think this is a really interesting situation because the way I understand it, the Cardinals could have designated him a post-June 1st release as well, and therefore saved more money on this year's cap as opposed to next year's cap. But I basically think they're just telling us, we know we stink. I want money next year. I don't care about this year. There's nowhere to spend it anyway. You know, so we're waving the white
now. Take our medicine, and hopefully next year is a new moon for us.
Yeah, I mean we're going to eat our vegetables. It's going to be a brutal year. Waving the white flag to some degree. Okay, and I'm not saying that's the wrong choice from where they sit. I think they're the worst team in the league.
I think it's a great choice.
Yeah, exactly.
Lean into it.
Lean into it.
You've got that extra pick from the Texans. See what that ends up being, but don't even worry about what that pick is. Go get yourself the first pick in the draft.
Yes. And are they better off without Hopkins? And what I mean by that is it's a new era. It's a new culture. Of course, I'm going to bring up Larry Fitzgerald. If it would have been Larry, would they have kept him as a great influence? I'm not even saying Hopkins is a bad influence, but, you know, is he not part of the culture we want to build? If it was J.J. Watt, would they have kept them? You know, guys like that. I don't know. I just kind of got the feeling that we're fine with you leaving the building and we'll just, you know, again, eat our vegetables and take one on the chin this year and move on.
Yeah. And I will say with sorry to interrupt, but with Hopkins, you know, he wasn't that guy that they drafted and developed and was part of the core of the team. He was a mercenary that they had brought in anyway. And that's where DeAndre Hopkins is at this portion of his career. The reason he signed there is because they gave him a really big contract, right? And so he is in Arizona. They were willing to do that deal with him at the time because they wanted to win. They thought they were in a mode to go win. It didn't end up working out for him that way, and it's a new era for the Arizona Cardinals. We'll see if Kyler Murray is part of that new era. Budda Baker is part of that new era. I would think they would hope that is the case. But DeAndre Hopkins was never, you know, a cornerstone, foundational piece.
Right. Yeah, I tend to agree. And we all made fun of the Texans when they traded him for David Johnson and other things, but maybe they weren't all that sad to see him go either. You know what I mean? Like he's been traded twice, or he's been let go, moved on twice now. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. No one's told me that. As a player, kind of like Larry, I mean, he's the old man at the YMCA that can't run anymore and can't jump in your pickup hoops games, but still finds a way to come down with the ball and get a ton of rebounds. You know, I mean, he's never been a separator, but he's also been suspended for PEDs, right? I mean, is that correct? I know he was suspended for something recently, and I think it was PEDs.
Yes, it was a PED suspension, and he missed basically half the season last year.
it's always a red flag for me when older dudes get suspended for PEDs. Like, did you need those? You know what I mean? Like, do you know you're not what you used to be? And again, I'm being kind of harsh on the player. Maybe he wasn't even guilty. I mean, I'm just saying he was never a great separator to begin with. But some of these old man, receiver, contested catch guys fade away slow. So I still think he's an asset to any team. The Cardinals' offense was so weird, though, under Kingsbury. I mean, everybody was static, and I think he can be a power slot, but they didn't use him that way very much, but he has a unique game, and I think he's still an asset to any team. Obvious teams that are being thrown around are the Chiefs and Bills, and the media is making it sound like it's this huge power struggle, like the Cold War, trying to figure out who's going to get Hopkins and keep the other one from getting them. And these be a phenomenal fit with both, and they're obvious contenders. But I just went to overthecap.com just to see what their space is, because I knew both are hurting. Only the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have less salary space right now than the Chiefs and Bills. They're the second and third worst in the league. Now, you can go to the bank of Mahomes or the bank of Allen and make some space, but I don't know that I can give him big money. And we often talk about the Deshaun Watson contract messing up quarterback contracts around the league. Lamar wants that deal. Hurts wants that deal, whoever. Well, I think the Odell deal screws things up too. Like, if I'm him, I kind of want an Odell type of deal. I've had an equal career. I'm as good or better at this stage. Well, just because the Ravens did it doesn't mean I should do it. I mean, that's not a good deal, especially come June, when no one has cap space.
Yeah, and teams have gone through their offseason process, and would the Chiefs have drafted a second round wide receiver and they had checked in on DeAndre Hopkins in a trade and they didn't do it? Would they have spent that second round pick elsewhere if they had DeAndre Hopkins? So
sure.
If teams moved on that might have been more interested a couple months ago before the draft. And yeah, cap space is a problem. Teams can create cap space, as we know.
Mm-hmm.
Would the Ravens have rather had DeAndre Hopkins than Odell Beckham? Because Hopkins has played healthy more recently than Odell has.
Mm-hmm.
But now it seems like, that would have been a great fit. But I can't imagine DeAndre Hopkins now on top of Odell with what they've already done there in Baltimore. So I would take Baltimore out of it for DeAndre Hopkins. So who actually fits, who has the money, and who's going to create space for him? And in this case, it would probably have to be a multi-year deal just because you're moving money around rather than that 1 year deal like Odell got.
So here's a couple teams just to throw out there. And I don't like any of these fits, but they're teams that have a wide receiver need to some degree and available cap space as it sits right now. The Panthers, but does he want to go there? I mean, that's kind of opposite of what he asked for. The Packers, similar situation, not exactly proven top 5 quarterback. The Patriots, same. I mean, he might be the number one receiver on these teams, but not exactly what he asked for in terms of quarterbacks. But
is Bill O'Brien and DeAndre Hopkins, do they have a good relationship or do they have a bad relationship? I would think bad, because
I would think bad.
So that would probably prevent the whole New England Patriots thing, because now that I think about it, that might be one of the better fits if they could fit him in, because they have the need.
They have the stability in the defense that he asked for.
And who knows, maybe Bill O'Brien's like, oh yeah, that was stupid trading him away. And maybe they've made amends. Maybe it was never a Bill O'Brien versus, it was just a whatever transactional thing. Maybe that would be an okay
the organization.
Right.
Maybe it would. I don't know. I bet it's not, but maybe it is. Who knows? Again, the Chiefs and Bills, if they made space and they go all in, I would understand it. But what about the Lions? I mean, right now, only 3 teams have more cap space than the Lions. And Jamison Williams is suspended and Hawkinson's gone. Like, it's kind of Amon-Ra St. Brown and the Pips right now as pass catchers.
Yeah, I could see it.
Yeah.
I could see it. Is that the powerhouse defense, the big time quarterback that he's looking for? I would guess that he's going to try to end up with the Kansas City Chiefs. If I had to guess, if I had to bet on one team, it would be the Chiefs. I think the Bills would certainly have some interest, and that would make some sense, but they would have to figure out the cap stuff. And is he a good enough player for them to, restructure things and maybe hurt themselves down the road to bring him in? I could absolutely see that working with one of those two teams.
Me too. I think those are the 3 teams that really make any sense at all, is the Lions, but more so the Bills, and especially the Chiefs. So, frankly, if I'm Andy Reid, I'm a little concerned with my pass catchers right now.
And looking at DeAndre Hopkins' numbers he put up after his suspension last year, it was vintage DeAndre Hopkins numbers. I mean, his per game numbers would have put him at a 90 catch, 1,400 yard season.
Yeah. And do we think he still could do that this year? Possibly. I mean, especially if Kelsey's demanding a lot of attention, or Diggs, or you don't quite have to be Batman anymore. You could be a little bit more of a Robin role, you know?
And he was never someone who leaned all the way on athleticism.
Right.
Or really at all on athleticism.
No, he's never run by anybody's life.
Yeah, but he can still pull down the ball, you know, and he's savvy enough as a route runner to get his open, close to his open as he used to, and pull down those contested catches. And does he have a quarterback that trusts him? I think is the big question. What about reuniting him in Cleveland?
I thought about that too. I mean, they're all in it to win it too. I mean, their first pick was a receiver. Amari Cooper's expensive, but their big problem is if it is a multi-year deal, they have big cap problems next year. I think they have some money to spend now, but
that would probably have to be a situation where they bring him in, his numbers low now, and then goes up next year, but it's lower than what Amari's was, and then they get rid of Amari Cooper next year, and then it's just DeAndre Hopkins.
I mean, we had that good conversation earlier in the week about worst to first. Let's say the Browns got Hopkins. Maybe they're worst to first.
They're already
a pretty good team.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so there's going to be a landing spot for him. It's going to, you know, it's a mercenary feel to this portion of DeAndre Hopkins' career. He has something to add for some teams, and he would absolutely be something for one of those contenders for sure. I've heard the New York Jets thrown out there, but they've already done so much work at wide receiver. I don't think that would be it either.
It's like, what more could you do at wide receiver if you're the Jets? I mean,
well, for the Jets, it's like, oh shoot, we could have got DeAndre Hopkins. Why'd we spend all this money on
Alan
Lazard?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Aaron Rodgers might love Lazard and Cobb, but I bet he'd like Hopkins better, and they'd get along just fine. You know what I mean?
All right. So next, we got some interesting questions, some early mailbag questions. We're still going to do the full mailbag show Thursday. Get those questions in at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. But some questions about how we got to where we are in our careers, and for some young aspiring scouts out there, advice from Matt Williamson next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Built Bar. When you look for a snack, what are you looking for? Well, your nutritionist would tell you that you want a lot of protein and you want not a lot of sugar. And you're probably trying to keep those calories low if you are like me and trying to lose a few lbs and get into that summer shape. You might throw a bathing suit on here in the coming months as the weather gets a little bit warmer. And right now you don't want to see me in a bathing suit, but you would rather see me in a bathing suit now than at the start of the year, say. And I've been doing great with my diet, and a lot of that is because of Built Bar. This is my favorite flavor. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see the peanut butter bar. It's just the classic peanut butter bar is my favorite. They've got them new and in stock and restocked at built.com. The peanut butter bar is 17 grams of protein, but only 140 calories, only 4 grams of sugar. It is fantastic, covered in 100% real dark chocolate, so you really feel like you're getting a treat, but you are not getting all the calories and sugar of a candy bar, even though it tastes just as good and actually keeps you satisfied longer because of all of that packed in 17 grams of protein and low in net carbs. And really, that's what's going to derail your diet is when you get a little bored or you reach for something and you got that bag of chips, you got that candy bar, whether it's in your desk or in your pantry or in your purse or your car or wherever it is. Get rid of that stuff, replace them with Built Bars, and know that healthy can taste amazing. Tons of great flavors at built.com right now. Very vanilla bar and puff, the peanut butter bar and puff, birthday cake puff, coconut brownie chunk, unbelievable flavors. I don't know how they pack in all the flavor in a low calorie, high protein package, but they do. And you can find them on your store shelves now as well, like Walmart and Sam's Club. And of course, all the flavors and varieties in a mixed box if you don't know what flavor you want at built.com. Okay, I want to go to a couple of interesting questions here, Matt, before we get going any further. And by the way, you were at Steelers OTAs this week, correct?
Yes. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and kind of an interesting turn of events. Like we said this on the air, so I'm like breaking any trade secrets, but Folks, everyone loves this time of year, and it's optimism, but people overreact. Joe Blow isn't at minicamp, or isn't at OTAs, or whatever, or he's not participating, or he's sitting in, is a new term. So we usually broadcast right next to the fields, outdoors. There's 4 fields out back. That's 2 of the Steelers, 2 are Pitts. And there were some internet issues, so we had to go to the indoor facility, which was all dark. Nobody's using the indoor. Nice big indoor facility the Pitt and the Steelers share. So we set up at this little rinky-dink table to do our show. And obviously we see there's somebody in here working out. Like, what's going on? Well, it's Aaron Donald. And so I'm like 4 feet away from Aaron Donald, and he's doing drills in there by himself in the dark, like Muhammad Ali running the streets in the morning, nobody watching, that type of thing. But I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, I bet the blurb in LA is Aaron Donald's not at OTAs. Well, he's meanwhile working harder than the Steelers are in the back. No one's working harder than that guy in the whole city right now, and he's from Pittsburgh. He went to Pitt. I think it's still his home. I'm sure he has a house in LA. I don't know. I didn't talk to him. I didn't bother him. I just kind of watched in awe, but don't think these guys are sitting around eating bonbons.
Right. Yeah. And Aaron Donald's not one of the guys you have to worry about coming into camp in shape. Right. And so contractually it's voluntary OTAs at this portion of the offseason. And someone like Aaron Donald putting in probably more work and getting into better shape than the guys that are actually working out at the OTAs. And he doesn't need to learn any of the early installs at OTAs for the Rams either. So get the young guys some work there, get them those reps, and you stay with your own trainer in Pittsburgh and get your body right for the season. By the way, if you get close to Aaron Donald and you tried to talk to him, Matt, you might get stabbed by his trainer. Were they doing the knife drills?
Not when I was in there. They had all kinds of props though. I mean, they obviously have a very regimented workout. I didn't see any blades, but I thought the same thing though. Like, Cam Hayward's a tremendous NFL player. He's 2 fields away. He's 1 parking lot away. He's over there hitting the sled and working on technique, and sure, he's getting better. But I'm sure Donald's like, if I'm in LA doing that, as opposed to all these specific Aaron Donald agility drills I'm doing, I'm better doing this alone than I am with the team doing what my D-line coach says. And I can back it up. Obviously my career has worked out just fine. And then maybe I go get a home cooked meal with my mom, in Pittsburgh or whatever it is. It's just, don't give these guys a hard time. And along those lines, I was BSing with some old school Steeler folks, and they're like, Bill Cowher wasn't even at OTAs. Like, sometimes he was, sometimes he wasn't. Like, times were different back then, and there weren't 9,000 reporters. Everyone's filming stretch today. Like, does anybody care about stretch? They're stretching for 20 minutes. Like, don't overreact to OTAs is my bottom line, or who's there and who's not. That's the lesson here.
And just goes to show that just because you're not at OTAs, there's other ways to work out and improve in the offseason. These guys are
maybe better ways
into shape, and especially those veterans that are superstars. They know what to do. The guys that have, like, Aaron Donald, Pitt is pretty much his own home facility, right? He's put money on that facility.
I think the weight room is the Aaron Donald weight room or something. There's his name is on the building somewhere.
He's got a key.
Yes, he's welcome anytime he wants, and he's fed back to the organization and all that. And even along those lines, like someone said, Troy Polamalu never came to 1 OTA. I think he was just fine,
Absolutely. Looking at a couple of cool stories here out of OTAs that we hadn't covered yet over the last week or two since OTAs got going. Our own Ross Jackson, who covers the Saints for Locked On Saints and some other outlets as well. And he had a really cool tweet from practices last week, and Saints tight end Foster Moreau was not only present but participating, running routes, catching passes, everything at Saints OTAs 2 months after his Hodgkin's lymphoma diagnosis, which is awesome and really cool. And it was awesome to see that tweet from Ross Jackson. It was retweeted by Schefter and got a lot of play. And so that's a really cool story. And on a similar note, John Metchie, it looks like things are going well for him in his second year. He's recovering from a strained hamstring, so he wasn't on the field, but is expected to make a full recovery from that hamstring and be ready for the start of training camp. And they're going easy with him to get him ready to make sure he's ready to go after making so much progress since he missed his entire rookie season last year with the Texans after being diagnosed with leukemia. So really good stories there with John Metchie and Foster Moreau with some, very serious ailments that and seeing them back on the field is really cool.
I don't have much to add except for that kind of warms the heart a little bit. That's wonderful. It doesn't look like they've missed significant times or ruined their careers because of these terrible diseases. And again, I'm not a doctor. I don't know any more than anybody else out there, but 23, 22 extremely fit athletes probably have a better chance to recover quicker than me or you or my parents or whoever, or unfortunately, a lot of people that deal with these awful illnesses.
Yeah, no doubt. Absolutely. Okay. Next, Matt. And by the way, so you're covering OTAs for the Steelers, but you had to go indoors, so you didn't even get any information on what
didn't get a thing. We were really frustrated. Yeah, it's like, so the internet line wasn't there. I could have been doing it from my basement. I'm sitting there in the dark room, but at least Aaron Donald was there, so that made my day. That's better than nothing.
To be honest, that's better insight than you probably would have gotten from watching the Steelers practices at OTAs anyway. So fantastic.
Which is basically my whole thought for bringing that up is don't overreact to OTAs. More's going on at the indoor facility that start.
Yeah, and don't do the thing like I already hate it for training camp, but I've already got stats for 49ers OTAs with their.
Don't get me started. We haven't had this conversation.
Wow. Sam Darnold was, 12 of 15, and Trey Lance was also 12 of 15. They both missed and we're doing it with the kickers now too. The 49ers drafted a kicker, so I'm seeing the exact stats for Zane Gonzalez versus Jake Moody at the first 49ers opening OTA. So that's what's going on over here.
Oh, wow. That makes me bonkers too, especially at training camp. Well, that's even worse here, but even at training camp, it's bad. Quick Steelers story, but it applies to all teams. My partner in crime with the Steelers, Dale Lawley, has been covering the team forever, a really long time. And he said there was a summer where Cordell Stewart and Kent Graham are fighting for the Steelers quarterback spot. And every day in the paper, Kent Graham's beating him. He completed 12 out of 13 today. Cordell was only 9 of 16. And my buddy Dale's like, Kent Graham read that stuff and dumped the ball down every time possible to make himself look good in the press. He may have been the nicest guy in the world. I don't know Kent Graham. I'm not even bashing him. But he's like, he paid attention to that stuff. So he made every easy throw against air to make himself look good in the Post Gazette.
That's fantastic stuff. The lesson today is don't overrate anything going on in OTAs unless it's someone coming back from lymphoma that's making
there you go. That's a story.
You're right. Okay, next, Matt. We've got someone seeking advice, a recent graduate seeking advice on how to get into scouting, and then another question about how we got to where we are doing podcasts covering the NFL next. Thanks again, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Shout out to all the everydayers. Make sure you are subscribed up to the new Peacock and Williamson YouTube channel, and you can find us everywhere you get your podcasts. And make sure you get those Twitter questions in for Thursday's full mailbag show at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL, or drop a comment on YouTube. Okay, I want to go to a question from Colt. And he says, this question is for Matt. So I'm going to bow out of this one, Matt. Although I'm not going to, because I got some advice.
No.
I've been in Colt's shoes before.
Mm-hmm.
Colt says, I'm a year removed from graduating college with a bachelor's degree in sports management. How do I get into football scouting? I've been passionate about scouting and the draft since watching my first draft almost 15 years ago and want to work in scouting. So, Matt, do you have any advice for young Colt or any other prospective scouts out there?
I do think scouting's harder to get into than coaching. I absolutely do. There's fewer opportunities. There's not as many college positions that are just scouting. I was fortunate enough to have one at Pitt where I was the assistant recruiting coordinator, where all I did was watch tape. I didn't coach anybody. None of that sort of thing. It's hard. It's really hard. And I had no connections. I didn't play the game. That hurt. I'm hoping that this tweeter played the game, at least can go to a high school coach or former teammate, or had some connection at the college he went to. I also went to Pitt at Johnstown, not Pitt at Johnstown. We didn't have a football team, so I couldn't even knock on the door there. But when I was at Pitt, there were plenty of young, aspiring football people that would come to the facility, knock on the door. Hey, can I help in can I do the laundry after practice? Can I do anything for the team? Can I go get food? Can I do anything? And that's step one. If you can get in the door in any capacity whatsoever, and frankly, you're not going to make any money. I mean, you might make minimum wage, maybe, or they might, help you with something on campus or whatever, maybe. But if you can get in the organization in any way possible, and in my day, you'd write letters, here, I'm sure you can get in touch with people with social media and whatnot. That's the first step. And I'm sure a lot of local high schools would let you volunteer for a year, and you could do a lot. Like, I volunteered at Duquesne for a season before I got hired doing anything. And what I would do, and Duquesne's a very small school, and I would film practice. I would watch the 2 recruiting tapes they got a week where Pitt would get 50 a day. I would be the linebacker coach if the linebacker coach didn't show up because he drives a bread truck and had to work late. Like they don't, like anything. I just kind of knocked on the door. I'm eager. I'm reasonably smart. I'll do anything you want. I probably won't be good at any of it, but let me in. And they gave me $0. And I think I have 5 Duquesne t-shirts and 2 pairs of pants and a zip up. And that's what I got out of it,
There you go. I love it. Yeah. my first thought when I saw this question is, if your last name isn't Gruden or Belichick or Shanahan.
Shanahan's a good one. Yeah.
It's going to be difficult, right?
It's harder than,
a lot longer. And you're not going to get that job right out of college, but you have to be willing to work for free, and you have to make those connections if you don't have the right last name and the right connections already. And that probably comes from working for free and hoping that you do a good job and you get an opportunity that you could then get hired on somewhere, or that someone you worked with gets a job somewhere that then can hire you on or recommend you, right? Because, and if I'm not mistaken, Matt, if it wasn't for your connections that you made earlier in your career, you wouldn't have gotten the other opportunities you got.
No, I mean, one of the things I got fortunate with was before I did anything, I owned a swimming pool servicing business coming right out of college. I wasn't qualified to do anything, but that was my summer job. I bought this swimming pool servicing company that I worked for every summer in college and made okay money. But in Pittsburgh, winters, you don't do anything. All the pools are closed. So right. I'm like, well, this is kind of an opportunity. I have several months off. Maybe I can do my dream and get somehow involved with football. Well, I was fortunate. I mean, my company serviced very, very expensive pools. Some of the nicest neighborhoods in Pittsburgh could afford to have someone come clean their pool or whatever. And one of them was Ralph Sinrich, who had bought Mario Lemieux's first house, one of the nicer houses in the South Hills of Pittsburgh. And Ralph was maybe the 5th or 6th most prominent NFL agent at the time. He had Bill Fralick, he had Dermontti Dawson, he had a lot of Pitt dudes, he had a lot of Steeler dudes, but did really well. And I just happened to see him one time when I was there. I was like, I would love to do this. Is there anyone you could just point me in a direction? And he spent several minutes of his life just to say, call this guy, Joe Butler, who is doing Metro scouting. And at the time, that was recruiting before the internet even existed, And so the next winter, I sat there with Joe watching grainy high school tape, but Joe knew everyone in the city of Pittsburgh. And he said, I'll call Duquesne and tell them they have a good volunteer here on your hands. So I had a winter or two of not making any money, volunteering, doing anything I could, make a connection and go from there,
Yeah. So the first step for
it's rough
Colt here, who's asking the question is, go somewhere and volunteer, and you're gonna have to work for free, and you're gonna have to find.
You might be cleaning jock straps,
right? It might be hard to even find a place that allows you to work for free.
Right, because a lot of people want to do it. I mean, there's just no way around it.
Absolutely. So connections.
What's one thing I will throw out there, though, that didn't exist when I started, is there is this wonderful thing called the internet that you could do YouTube videos, you could do whatever, and maybe someone, you or I retweet them, and then somebody else sees it. At least there's that avenues.
There is ways, and in a roundabout way, Matt, you and I work in scouting because we do scouting, and we're paid for our opinions when we scout players. From a certain angle, we're just not paid by a team to do it. Right. And so you can do scouting and do your own thing, but number one, just do it and do it and do it. And I will recommend there is a service called, so I went through the National Football Post and did their scouting program, and they had some
I remember that. Okay.
agents and scouts, and, Greg
Yeah.
Gabriel was the main guy that was doing it then. He used to be a GM of the Chicago Bears. And there's another service that I'm blanking on now that is called National Scouting Academy, I believe.
I just Googled it because I make sure I got it right. The Scouting Academy is a you can pay for it and get connections, which I would have done back then.
Absolutely. I think it's totally worth it because they give you really good information. I've met a lot of people that graduated and went through that Scouting Academy program, and they give you really good advice, and you go through and you do the scouting process, and you do scouting reports like college and NFL teams do their scouting systems, and you do a really good job. And if you catch somebody's eye, there's a lot of people that are connected through that, and some people do get hired, and that's something that didn't exist in the past. So I would for sure go through something like Scouting Academy, and almost everybody I know that's done it has had good things to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, they have Senior Bowl connections. I know Louis Riddick's involved. I think Mike Martz is involved. Like, this isn't some fly-by-night joker group. Like, I would have killed for that opportunity. I'm glad you brought that up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that didn't even exist when I did the program I went through, and I think they got an even better system going on.
And I don't know that anyone can do it, but I know Ross Tucker's very involved with the Broadcasting Academy too, or there's some kind of broadcasting thing you can go pay for. I don't know if they take everyone or not, but if you don't want to necessarily work for a team and want to get involved, kind of what we're doing now, I think that's a start too.
Absolutely. So there you go. Good luck.
Good luck
to anybody out there that's trying to get into the football business, whether it's coaching or scouting. I mean, it is not easy. A lot of people want to do it, and goodbye to any of your free time.
Yeah, there's no free time. You're not going to make any money, but so get that out of the way too.
And even when you get hired by a team, what they used to call scouts back in the day, they called them 25 and 25, because you find a 25-year-old who's not married, who's not tied down, that's willing to work for $25,000 a year, and you send them on the road as an area scout.
Yeah, I would have killed for $25,000 a year my first 3 years of Pitt. I got a big raise and went from $12,000 to $18,000 after 2 years. That was the first time they'd ever promoted like a GA, and I got a 50% raise. Like, woohoo! Living large.
Good question.
Also helps to have a wife that has a real job.
Oh yes, that is always that helped me in the podcasting business when I was like, okay, I got the radio thing going on, but I want to go fully into podcasting, and having a wife that's works in the medical industry and is doing well. That helps to know that you have that as well. And it's like, man, if this podcasting thing doesn't go great and the whole family's on my shoulders, it might be a lot more difficult to jump in with both feet.
Yeah, I mean, hey, hon, this swimming pool business that makes pretty good money for a 23-year-old. I'm just going to throw that away and go make 90 cents an hour at Pitt. Cool. Yeah, go for it, Matt.
Might not see it as often either.
Right, and I'll never be home. Yeah.
So fantastic question there. I'm going to tease one of our first questions for tomorrow's show that asked us how we got into podcasting and how we are here, and if we ever thought we'd be podcasting about the NFL. The shorter answer is no. The longer answer on tomorrow's Twitter Thursday show. Get your questions in for that one at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL, or drop a question in the YouTube comments. Make sure you subscribed up. Matt and I back tomorrow right here, Peacock and Williamson.